In this video, I would like to present local Western Massachusetts geology from creationist perspective. We're gonna go over things like Mount Tom or why do we have footprints of the dinosaurs. Okay, let's get it started. I would like to put this in 3 steps. First, we're gonna get familiarized with local geology, how are the mountains, what feature can we see on surface geology, and the reason being so people who lives around here, they can recall those, like for example Mount Tom or Seven Sister Mountain or certain river valley. Second, we would go in details to the whole entire event of flooding days of Noah and what processes were going on here in Western Massachusetts. And thirdly, I would like to bring the secular interpretation of the local geology and the flood geology and compare them two and see which one holds more water. All right, without further ado, let's start. The first thing I would like to point out that here, if you live in Pioneer Valley or Springfield or Westfield or any around cities here, you will see features like Mount Tom. Maybe you've been to Mount Tom and you see these cliffs, these brown rocks. These rocks are made out of basaltic rock, and what's unique about them, no other mountains around here is made out of the same rock. Basalt is found on an ocean floor, only ocean floor. The continental crust is made out of granitic rocks. So the question is, why do we have a Mount Tom made out of basalt? And if you actually take and zoom out on Google Maps, you will see this hockey stick right here, if you can see it. I'll place the hockey stick on top of it so you can see it. And that is Mount Tom Ridge. It's called Holyoke basalt. It goes all the way through Connecticut, which is an interesting feature. So if you see these rocks, some of those rocks come brecciated and then resolidify, like this rock right here that I'm showing. This would be fossil earthquake. So if you see that, but most of you are familiar with Mount Tom. Also, if you go to like Beckett, you will see the other kind of rocks, and they are metamorphic rocks, sedimentary metamorphic rock. You'll see them how they are different. And the question is, why are they metamorphic? So if you know these local geology, if you see any of this thing, now that's what we're going to be talking about. And maybe you wonder why we have this little flat area in Connecticut River Valley or Pioneer Valley where we are living, Springfield and all these other cities. This is how it came to be. So if you know these features, let's see how they start. Before we continue with this research, I would like to make a disclaimer. This is ongoing research. Maybe in future we will polish a couple things, but with that having said, let's start. We're gonna go over the whole entire Noah's flood from local Massachusetts geology, from this location, mainly Connecticut River Valley, or it's called Pioneer Valley. And we're going to start with fountains of deep breaking open. Bible says in 600 year, on a second month, in a 17th day of Noah's life, Noah entered the ark, and then all fountains of deep broke open. Today we have mid-ocean ridges. If you look at our planet, you will see that we have these ridges going all around the world. It is possible when all the fountains broke open, the tectonic activity pretty much went all the way around the world and set the tectonic activities in motion. The first thing that would happen is probably tsunami, and we know from today tectonic activity or any earthquakes inside the ocean would cause a tsunami. But if all the fountains broke open, it would send a massive tsunami. Massive tsunami that would probably cover the whole entire continent. Although in this research we will not talk any global events. Although flood was global, we're going to be focusing only on Western Massachusetts. If you look at the map, as we mentioned already, we're going to focus on this little section. But before we get to the little section, I would like to give some broader details. For example, as found deep broke open, the huge tsunami wave cover Massachusetts area, whatever the land mass was here, it would cover with many layers of sand. Maybe there was multiple tsunami waves, and usually scientists call those rock layers Paleozoic. There would be like first layers that was deposited, and as tectonic activity would continue with this tsunami, it would start with decompression. It's called mountain building event. So mountain in like Berkshires, west of our area here, like mountains in Russell or Beckett or Pittsfield, all those mountains, and the mountain east of us, as the continents would collide, it would actually push the mountains up, probably 3 kilometers up. But also it would, some of the layers that were on the bottom would be pushed down into the earth, and this would create a mountain probably 3,000 meters high. And keep in mind, this would be wet sediment, so this would be almost like a wet mountain. But the bottom of this mountain would went through metamorphism, and rock would become metamorphic, like we noticed in the beginning. So this is the start. We have a huge mountains in this area of wet sediments, but as tectonic activity continue, now the continents would start to rift apart. And we would go to our second point. It would be a rift valley. And now, probably the rest of this research will be mainly focused on the rift valley. And if you are wondering what rift valley is, this would be a basic oversimplified diagram of a rift valley. So if you would see, there's a lithosphere on top and a asthenosphere on the bottom. And now, when continents are splitting, or basically when the crust is pulling apart, there's a fault up here. This would be called normal fault here and normal fault here, and the middle part would either thin out or it would drop down, and it would just break and thin out to the middle. So this would be a valley right here. Two plates pulled apart. I mean, two sides pulled apart. This thing thinned out, but the asthenosphere beneath it is made out of semi-solid material, and it is under a great pressure. But what happened here, when you create a rift valley, the asthenosphere is going through decompression melting. So this is really hot, but it's compressed. But when you release the pressure, it's actually gonna melt, not because of adding heat, but just because of you lose the pressure, it melts. So when it melts, you have a magma flow through here. But what happened here in Massachusetts, right here? So if you look, this would be a little bigger diagram. Can you see it? So you will see here, this would be a normal fault here, normal fault here. This land right here would collapse, and if you see this color, it would be down here. Now, as this happened, as the rift valley occurring, since it's a flood, right away as the area drops down in the valley, it would start to bring sediments. And remember how we had Berkshire Mountains and mountains of east of us. All those wet sediments would actually, because of rain and just being wet and maybe an additional tsunami wave, it would actually bring sediments into the valley floor. So first what happened, as the valley starts sinking, as the surface area starts sinking down, it would bring sediments. And here we have a New Haven air cost. So the first sediments that came in called New Haven air cost. We're gonna go back to that, but and then this would be kind of low energy sediments. If water flows slowly, it deposits smaller sediments. If there's a more energy in water, water flows faster, we have a bigger sediments. So now we would have, after the first layer, there would be another deposit happen. It would cause shadow middle formation, and this would be high energy flow of sediments. And right here you would see this rock, and you see how it looks almost like cemented, bigger chunks of rocks. Sometimes you have a gravel sized rocks in this rock. So this would be a high energy. So maybe as the eastern border, this would be eastern border fault. We're gonna go over that. As this side would drop faster, it would actually create a lower spot, and water would rush in with the high force and deposit this shadow middle formation. But as I mentioned before, we have asthenosphere that went through decompression melting. As this crust was thin, the decompression melting happened, and now it's a liquid mantle underneath. So it runs like water, and as this was breaking down, the water starts seeping through it. And this whole entire Connecticut River Valley would be filled with this lava that goes through it, through these sediments already, and through the base rock. And it would come up and fill the valley floor. And this would be a massive, massive flow. It would go from like New Hampshire, from New Haven, Connecticut, it would go all the way to like Greenfield. There would be a huge lava. It would almost look like a lake of fire. And this basalt was flowing really fast. We can see that it would be like almost 150 meter, almost like 400, 500 feet thick of lava that would. The basalt would actually look like this. You will see it's a darkened on inside and it's turned brown because of oxidation outside. But it would be these kind of triangular rocks, and you can see the whole mountains of them formed. So this is the basalt. But this area would continue to go down. The next layer that would come would after Holyoke basalt, and it's called Holyoke basalt. After layer would come, it would be East Berlin Formation. So we, at the same time, we have East Berlin Formation that goes all the way through Connecticut and Massachusetts as well. But East Berlin Formation, they would come on top of this lava. So lava would come up, probably surface would solidify, and then as the rain and tsunamis and everything continue, it would deposit at East Berlin Formation. East Berlin Formation consists of sediments like these. It's a disturbed rock. These, you can see these folds in here in this rock, and a lot of time you see disturbance in it. So that means it was deposited in running water, probably low energy, but it was still in running water. You can see many different features that it was running water. And this East Berlin Formation is famous for its dinosaur foot track fossil, for water ripples, for raindrops. You can actually see the forecast from Noah's flood. It was raining, as you see on this picture. The flood warning is in effect until the rainbow comes up. It's a little joke. But as East Berlin Formation formed, there was dinosaurs that were trapped here, probably in Connecticut River Valley, and they were running up and down. And if you guys ask me why there were only dinosaurs, no other animals, I believe by this time, with all these tsunami, all the animals that are afraid of water, like cattle and whatever else, would already be dead by this time. But dinosaurs suitable for water can swim, and as they swim over or climb over the mountains that usually form, they will go inside the valley, and now they would run around because they're suitable for water. And there is maybe occasional mammal footprints somewhere here. All right, but then we would have another flow of basalt. So there would be more flow of basalt. It would be thinner layer. It's called Hamden basalt. And on top of the Hamden basalt, there would be another formation called Granby basaltic tuff, which would be a mixture of more like volcanic bombs and volcanic ash mixed with mud and stuff like that. So this would, and then we would start forming a Portland Formation. Portland Formation probably goes on top, and Portland Formation is famous for dinosaur track footprints as well. But this would be the last formation that happened. What happened next is amazing. So all this formation, all these water runoff and basalt would be now layered throughout all entire valley. But right here, if you look at this geologic map, if you see this blue line, there's a fault line that goes from the ocean to like New Hampshire, and that's called Eastern Border Fault. I promise it's not my fault, it's Eastern Border Fault, all right? But it would go through the whole entire area, and that's where the land continued to tilt. If you look on this diagram right here, this would be the Eastern Border Fault right here, and as the tectonic activity continued, the continents are rifting apart. It's actually split somewhere past Boston, Massachusetts, where the oceans start forming. But here in our area, all that happened is it's a fail rift valley with normal faults. It would continuously to pull apart. At this time, the Eastern Border Fault would continue collapsing and tilting the whole entire area. So you would see this New Haven air cause, Shadow Middle Formation, but Holyoke basalt. Now all these layers are tilting like this because of Eastern Border Fault. Isn't that amazing? Not only this, you know what happened when all these layers are tilted? Remember the mountains that were on the side, like Berkshire Mountain? By this time, it would continuously erode those mountains. A lot of the material would actually go west towards upstate New York, but some of it would actually go back in the Connecticut River Valley, probably from Berkshire Mountain and from the mountain of east of us, east of East Border Fault. So after this, we would have a next step. But the difference between like creationist perspective on these events and from secular events, in secular events we would have um, each of these deposition would take millions of years to form, and rock would be solid, and event would go one after another. In creationist perspective, a lot of things would go on simultaneously. So as the eastern border collapsed, the Portland Formation is still forming on top, and sometimes you can see the slow gradual tilting of certain layers. But now we're going, at this point when East Portland Formation was forming, I believe there could have been a huge tsunami wave that came and took all the dinosaurs out and brought them out west, because we cannot see any single dinosaur. And if we preserve plants next to dinosaur footprints in the rocks, why wouldn't we preserve dinosaur bones? I believe they were probably more buoyant and they were swept by a wave and carried away somewhere. But we're coming close to the end of the major tectonic activity. I would probably close to 5 months into the flood, as the water from the continent would recede or tsunami wave would go around. It would start to erode all these layers that were tilted, like you will see. This is the bottom piece, and then you see all this formation. This would be basalt. As it was tilted, the top was eroded. It was tilted like this, top was eroded. So now, for example, Westfield, Massachusetts will be here. That's where I live. If you look right here, that's where the Pioneer Valley Christian Academy is. It would be on this rock. So it would be on, this would be located on Portland Formation. But my house would be located on Haven Air Cross because it was tilted. And this line would be, but Holyoke basalt, the lava that was originally flow, would be a lot harder to erode. And as water was receding from the continent, or the tsunami wave was still going in, the erosion wave that was going in, it would erode everything but leave the Holyoke basalt behind. And that's how Mount Tom formed. If you see this rock layer from previous section, this would be Mount Tom right here. Connecticut River would actually guard through. So as the water was rushing through, it would cut through the basaltic. It would cut a canyon in basalt for the Connecticut River to cut through, but also Mount Tom wouldn't be eroded because it was harder to erode stone. So now that's what we have, Mount Tom. And if you look now at this geological map, you will see Mount Tom right here. This would be Mount Tom. And this hockey stick formation is actually right here. It's a tilted basaltic layer that was harder to erode. But everything else was relatively still soft sediments. That way it was eroded a lot quicker. And now we have this perfect Connecticut River valley. And Connecticut River flows through it.
At this point, I believe most of the Berkshire Mountains will be eroded, and the soft sediments would be eroded, but the stuff that was in the bottom of the mountain would actually uplift, and this uplift that happened helped to erode Connecticut River Valley, but as well, it would bring up all this metamorphic rock the Appalachian Mountain is made out of. So now we see, if you go to like Russell, Massachusetts, you will see those metamorphic mountains that are folded and rippled together. That's the base of the mountain. They used to be there at the beginning of the flood. So I think the Appalachian Mountain, this Berkshire Mountain, part of Appalachian Mountain, would be the only interesting mountain that was eroded probably before the end of the flood, and that would be already covered. So at this point, 5 months, the whole entire globe would be covered with water. All the ocean water would actually come to surface and cover everything with water, including Appalachian Mountains would be already underneath the water. So, but this is not all. Now we have the last stage. As all this tectonic activity was going on, it would actually heat up the ocean water from exposed mantle. And this warmth would actually cause the ocean water to evaporate rapidly. But there were so many volcanoes during a flood year, they would shoot a lot of ash into atmosphere, which would block the sunlight. And this environment would actually cause the ice age. And here in Massachusetts, in our river valley, this whole entire Connecticut River Valley would be filled with ice. And that helped to cut bigger gorge to Connecticut River Valley. And there is a blockage in Rocky Hill, Connecticut, which would fill this whole entire Connecticut River Valley with the lake called Hitchcock Lake. This Hitchcock Lake would last for a very long time, and after the whole world was already, after the flood, the whole world was not flooded. Here in Massachusetts, we still had a lake after the ice age. I think this is the end of the presentation.
So now we heard what happened here during Noah's flood. But unfortunately in Massachusetts, all these events are interpreted from different perspective, from a secular perspective, from million-year-old perspective. And I would like to make some comparison between their interpretation of the events and creationist interpretation. For example, what they're teaching that during the time of Pangea, this valley was spreading as the growth of nail 1 centimeters a year, so it was a really slow spread, and then we would have all these sediments accumulate on a lake bed over thousands or millions of years almost. All these sediments would accumulate slowly, and dinosaur would be walking on a lake shore. We see a lot of, if you go to local museum, you'll see a lot of dinosaur footprints in the forest. So there would be a forest, and there would be dinosaur footprints, and there would be grass growing, and dinosaur would walk through the grass. I don't know why, but that's what they saw. It was a lake. Or a side of the lake. Is it really so? Let's just focus first evidence. First of all, in these rocks, we have a preservation of many different fossil of plants. So you have this all of those plants are being brought in by water. None of them grew there. But if you would imagine dinosaur would walk over here and the plants would grow here, you would have the roots of the plants. Or even if there would be something growing anywhere, there would be a disturbance in elimination. There was disturbance of rock layers. So if plant would grow right here, for example, even if plant would rot away, there would be a hole that was left from this plant. However, if you go through whole entire, as I mentioned before, any of these formations, you will find zero evidence of any plants growing. There were no forests. If you would have a forest, we have a lot of pictures of, we have a lot of rocks that preserve raindrops. We have a lot of different ripples preserved. If you have all of that preserved and nearby there would be a forest or anything that would grow, grass, it would be preserved as well. However, we don't see any of it, which would be consistent with this, with the flood model, because during the flood nothing was growing here. It was all these layers that I mentioned before were deposited rapidly, nothing grew there. Dinosaur was walking on a vast plain of mud. They would go for miles and miles and miles. Second, we can see the formation of these sediments. They're claiming it was a lake bed, and you can see if it's a lake bed, there was no movement of water coming slowly, super low energy. All these layers would deposit rapidly, would deposit really slowly, and it would be fine elimination. If it's actually, like we believe was a flood, all these sediments were coming in fast, and they were deposited in running water. And you can actually see them. Some of these sediments would be sheet sediments. Sheet deposition. Sheet deposition, if a high energy wave is going through the from the mountains, for example, and depositing a whole and as the water going over the mountain, it would be have a high speed, but as it comes into a Connecticut river valley, it would slow down, and that would cause it to drop off sediments, and it would go through the whole entire valley. As a, you know, for example, we would point to Shuttle Meadow Formation. This formation, you see a giant, almost pebble size, sometimes pebbles, sometimes giant grains of sediments. So I believe as a tsunami wave go over the mountain, it would just sheet. It would be a sheet deposition throughout many really thick layer of these giant sediments. So it would be deposited 100-meter thick layer of this rock. So imagine 100-meter thick, that's like 300 feet thick layer of Shuttle Meadow Formation, roughly, but through a whole vast area. And then we would have a lot of alluvial fan that would be, but not all the deposition that was here, it was a high energy like Shuttle Meadow Formation. This, for example, would be a Portland Formation, the layer on top, and this would be layer below the basalt, but this would be layer below it. which is darker shale-like rock. Throughout the whole entire formation, it still wouldn't be a lake bed. We see a turbide beds. We see flute cast. We see many different features in, for example, Berlin Formation or Portland Formation. It would be hard to find a rock where you don't see evidence of flowing water. So although some parts, not all of it, was deposited in flowing water, because as this area was filled with sediments, there would be some stationary water, but those water would many times be flowing water. So a lot of these sediments were deposited in flowing water. We see, sometimes you go and you see many feet that you can see on surface of this formation, which they call lake bed, is convoluted, or they are disturbed. You see a water flow. So throughout all this area, all these layers were not a lake bed. They were mostly deposited by running water. I talked to a couple of college professors and geologists. So the other thing is, if we have a flat basalt, what we need to do is we need to decompress the asthenosphere below. And when we decompress the asthenosphere below, the basalt can flow. We had a lot of basalt flow. So it is covering many cubics of kilometer of lava. So I think you can feel like there's not even a lake that big that you can compare it to. It would probably it would fill half of Lake Champlain. So it would be a huge amount of lava flow. It's unimaginable. It would be probably billions of cubic feet of lava. In order to melt that much asthenosphere by decompression melting, you would need a fast action. You can have a plate moving 1 centimeter a year and decompress that much of asthenosphere. The temperature would adjust itself. So if you move it 1 centimeter a year, the temperature would adjust itself. There would be no basaltic flow. Connecticut River Valley must have happened fast. As you move the two plates apart fast, probably within weeks. Now all this pressure that was released in the valley, now it start oozing up. So it was a fast action. The position of...
Okay, the fifth point is the erosion. The fifth point is erosion. If you see, all these rock layers would be continuing, and all this was eroded. In traditional million-year idea, you have to erode those mountains over 170. So you have 170 million years of erosion between one event and another event. And if you would actually calculate how much of erosion happens per year, you would have to actually take a nanoscope and look at the microscope the amount of erosion. Basically none. It would be really slow rates of erosion. But with the flood and wet sediments, the huge wave would erode it. There was an uplift. See, there's an isostasy. As the Connecticut River, while all the sediments was going into the sediment, at this point almost liquid mantle below, it would actually go past this isostasy or past its buoyancy. So it would actually go down, and then it would lift back up. And it would happen really quickly, especially if there was decompression melting, or even if the asthenosphere wasn't melted, it still would happen relatively quickly. Going down, as it was raising up, the water eroded the self-sediments. In secular worldview, between the going down and the uplift was actually 170 million years. That's a lot of time. My question is, why did it uplift? That's kind of slow isostasy, or they don't even explain it as isostasy, they just explain with some different features now. But those events are too slow. And after that, after the uplift, all these sediments were eroded. Still, it was really, really slow. It would take 12 million years or 20 million years to erode all these sediments from Connecticut River Valley. It would still be really slow. If you have an ice age, it would erode a lot of surface. You're talking about a nanometer a year? Nanometer, not even a millimeter a year. And if you have ice age, it would erode like feet of that stuff a year. So yeah, erosion rates are too slow. All right,
thank you so much. I think it's a long video already. I want to see your response. My goal is to study this deeper. I'm a beginner geologist. I want to study this deeper, and there's a lot of area that needs to be studied. If you live in Massachusetts and you're a geologist, talk to me. I would like to know more. I would like to see your views. I'm looking forward to maybe taking additional classes and learn more and go deeper into lithology, because a lot of stuff, especially mountain around us here, I would want to know how fast it happened, how fast the sediments are forming. So yeah, thank you. Please comment below what you think, even if it's bad, if you want to correct me, or if you want to just tell me I'm uneducated because I don't believe evolutionary theory, or if you want to say that this is good, whatever you want to comment below. Thank you so much, and thank you for watching till this time. And I believe that's what happened when during tsunami, the wave would just carry them away. And what is unique, you have a East Berlin Formation on the bottom, on top of the basalt, of the alcoholic basalt. We have an East Berlin Formation, and then we have another flow of lava like Hamden basalt, and then we have a Portland Formation. And this, in traditional way, it would take millions of years, or maybe not millions, maybe thousands of years for all these formations to form, because they are, Portland Formation is like 1,000 meters thick. It's like a kilometer thick, and this would be like 200-meter thick formation. So these are huge, really, really thick, unimaginably thick, especially Portland Formation. But I believe it was the same dinosaur that was running in this formation. Those are the same dinosaur that ran in Portland Formation. So it would be quick. It would be relatively quick formation. It would be just this, the soft sediment mountains around it would flow. The sediments would actually flow as a mud almost. So we see that. We see those turbide flows in here. So whatever runs off the mountain, it wasn't just water. It was a mixture of mud that was flowing off. So we see all these fast formations.